Alright, today we're going to talk about FM synthesis. Okay, so for my birthday, my friends gave me this little fun synthesizer, the Volca FM. Probably because they know how much I love FM synthesis. And what I like about it is, well, the glassy metallic timbres that you can get from it, that it's really famous for. But also its versatility. You can do pretty much anything with it, like anything from analog style patches to electric pianos to, you know, crazy fucked up noise stuff. But, you know, a lot of people find it pretty difficult to get into programming it, and usually just end up, you know, using presets or just tweaking whatever presets are available. So in return, I thought I'd share a little video about a simple but effective way to approach FM synthesis from scratch, especially if you're coming from subtractive synthesis. So without much further ado, let's get to it.
Alright, so here's the deal. I'm not gonna talk anything about like mathematics of sidebands and whatever you can find in many online tutorials and stuff about FM. What I'm gonna say though is that you can compare the most basic FM setup where you have two operators, one frequency modulating the other, so you have the modulator and the carrier. You can compare those to a traditional synth voice. So the output level of the carrier is basically the amp level. The envelope on the carrier is the envelope in a synth voice. The output level of the modulator basically equals the cutoff frequency of a filter. So the level envelope of the modulator is roughly equivalent of the filter envelope. It's a pretty weird filter though, that once you go beyond a certain point of overmodulation, you will sort of cross over into some kind of distorted high pass instead of a low pass filter. And basically the waveform selector on a regular synth oscillator is the ratio of the frequencies of the carrier and the modulator. So in the most basic case, you have the frequency setting set to 1 on both the carrier and the modulator, and that will generate a saw wave. So this is your typical low pass filtered saw. If you change the modulator frequency to 2, so you have a ratio of 2 to 1, then you get a square wave. And I mapped the velocity to the output level of the modulator, so it acts as kind of a cutoff control. And you can hear that if I go all the way up top, it starts to sound quite distorted, although I've limited the level so it doesn't get completely crazy. But if we go in and we edit the output level of the modulator, then it sounds your typical FM insanity. The metallic mayhem. So there you have the basics. The ratio between the modulator and the carrier is the waveform selector. And then you have basically amp envelope and filter envelope, cutoff. Yeah, and once you know this, you can start using more pairs of operators. Maybe, create a 3 oscillator type setup. Although one thing I find really helpful is if you want to have this sort of filter cutoff type behavior, to choose an algorithm where you have one modulator modulating 3 carriers in parallel, so that you don't have to duplicate the envelopes on all 3 modulators and stuff like that. And then you can create some fairly classic synth setups, like this one, for example, which is 2 detuned saw waves with a square sub oscillator. Pretty familiar setup from the analog world, right? Go to unison mode, everything sounds better in unison, right? Maybe some chords. And just changing the frequencies of the carriers, you can get, you don't have maybe the full freedom of say an analog synth in this type of setup, but you can at least create some more kind of traditional synth patches, like this one with a pulse sub oscillator, a square main oscillator, and an octave up saw wave, for example, just by changing the operator frequencies a little bit. And again, with some trickery with the frequencies like this, you can get the same, this is the same kind of setup, but with square wave is detuned to a 5th. So you get kind of useful classic analog style patch. Chords with that sounds pretty good. Another handy trick I want to mention is the sub-audio carrier detuning trick. That's when you're setting the carrier frequency to a really low fixed sub-audio range frequency. What you will get is the modulator played back, like doubled and detuned by twice the frequency of the carrier, which is pretty great for thicker sounds like strings, and also to get this like detuned beating effect between two slightly detuned oscillators. So a basic string patch here with so that's just a sine operator going into a fixed carrier at the lowest frequency setting. And if you add a modulator on top of the modulator in the previous patch, you get two detuned saw waves, and it will sound like this instead. So from the pure sine to the detuned sauce classic string. And you can also stack those even further to get even more detuned copies. This is pretty good for like saving operators or creating other kinds of like layered effects. So it would sound, you get a lot of this beating effect, sort of a tremolo. Alright, so once you start thinking about pairs of carriers and modulators as synth voices, there's a lot of things you can do. So, for example, let's say a kick drum. So, a kick drum is made of a short burst of noise or a click, and then usually a pitch enveloped distorted sine wave, or maybe a triangle wave, like the M-Bass 11 that I have. When you crank up the harmonics, you get a triangle wave. So let's introduce another wave for our waveform selector, and basically to get a triangle, all you have to do is add some feedback to the modulator in a square wave setup. So a 2-to-1 ratio and then some feedback. And then the initial click is a short burst of noise. And noise you basically get by chaining a bunch of modulators and cranking the modulation way up. And once you got that dialed in, you can tweak the modulation levels and the frequencies basically any way you want to change the timbre of the noise to your liking. So an easier way to hear the differences is, let's say, a hi-hat patch, basically a metallic burst of noise. Yeah, you can go in and tweak levels to get like different sounds, different types of noise basically. So typically higher frequencies will give a brighter sound. You know, well, we've done a kick and a hi-hat, so how about the snare? It's pretty much the same principle. So it's, in this case, it's a short tone, like a sine for the fundamental frequency of the drum, and then a burst of noise for the decay that's in this case a pitch envelope that's going upwards a little bit to get this typical snare sound. So there you have it, and from here it's pretty simple to go further, like either tweaking these kind of basic patches or doing stuff like electric piano, for example, maybe one of the most famous applications of FM. And making an electric piano is actually fairly simple. So it's basically made out, like from the way an electric piano works, it's a burst of like metallic noise, depends on how you want it to sound, followed by basically a sine wave, maybe with a little bit of like tremolo effect or detuned beating going on. And I'm gonna leave that as an exercise for the viewer, because you now have all the tools in your toolbox to create a sound like that. So have fun, and so I hope you found all this useful. Hopefully it will make you get a bit more out of your FM synth than just using the presets. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment down below. If you like this, please hit the like button, please subscribe to the channel. Have fun, and see you next time. Okay, so right after I finished filming for the episode, I was playing around a bit with the Electribe sampler here, and I decided to sample all the sounds I did for the video and make a little hardware jam with it. So here's how that goes. So we got the kick, the hi-hat, the snare, the string, that last sound with the fifth in it, detuned sauce, and finally just the basic saw wave.